Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our last Wednesday webinar of 2020. We made it. And then I just want to apologize that we're being a bit late this evening. We had some technical difficulties, but it was more about a traffic problem on Bruno and Solna's side. They're attending a function this evening, but we're glad we're live now. So welcome, everyone. And then welcome, Solna, Bruno, and Greg. Hi, how are you guys doing? Greg?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Sort of, the year doesn't look like it's any near set to end.
That's true.
That's what it feels like.
And so now, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, except we were stuck in traffic. Bruno and I both came from different sides, I think, of town, and we were both stuck in the same traffic from opposite sides. So I'm usually not pleasant after I've been stuck in traffic. So I'm going to do my best to smile.
And I'm stuck with her, so that's...
No, he just said I have apparently some frustration tics. So he's a little worried. He has to stay close because this camera is only that wide. So Bruno is a little scared tonight. Don't worry, no, we'll be fine.
Bruno, how are you doing?
No, I'm good. This year end kind of caught me by surprise. It felt almost there, and then I just realized that that's it. There's like 1 week left of good proper work, and yeah, so I suppose it's a good thing we get to break faster, but there's still a lot that I suppose we all wanted to get done by the end of this year. So yeah, that's the flip side.
Well, at least we still get to go to one last function. So we had a SAPN function on the other side of town at Villa Bianca in Kempton. So I swear in all of this to still squeeze in one last function. I must say, I'm impressed with us, Bruno. Well done.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Just because you were stuck in traffic, Greg.
I'm especially happy that I wasn't, but I'm impressed.
I'm glad to hear you guys are doing well. And then to all our viewers this evening, we're going to discuss Greg, Solna, and Bruno's views on 2020 at the end of this webinar. We're first going to answer the questions that we had on our page, and then we can move on to that. All right, so I'm going to start with the first question. It says, how to remove an independent trustee? Should I go to the Master of the High Court, or is there any form to complete? Bruno, do you maybe want to take this one?
Well, no worries. So there's two processes to follow. You can go to the Master directly. I believe it's section 20, subsection 2, or you can go to the court and apply for the removal of the Master. Now, the difference between the two is if you go to the court obviously then there's a greater ambit. So there's a greater discretion by a judge to remove for whatever reason the judge deems appropriate in the interest of the trust. If you go to the master's got an exhaustive list of things, of reasons why it can remove, one of them being a non-adherence to the Trust Property Control Act with the trustee. So it's faster to go to the master, but there's limitations. It takes longer to go to the court, but there's no limitations.
Right, thank you so much for that. And then the second question is regarding the Property Valuation Act. Now, the viewer made a comment that it is a big issue, and this act requires a valuation report before the property is transferred. Yet we still have properties sold disregarding this act. What happened now the valuers are jobless? What's the point of even studying the real estate courses? So now, do you maybe want to take this one?
No, thank you. But I will pass it on to my learned brother next to me.
Okay, no problem.
But thank you. Thanks for the offer.
Look, I have to be honest with you. I'm not sure about this question. Reason being that there's nothing that I know of that I've ever studied, that I've ever read, that requires a professional valuation to be done. I know that the Act exists. I know that there's a couple of things in the Act that require valuations. I know that there's a lot of things in other Acts that require valuations by an accredited valuer. not a normal sale of a property. So for example, in your insolvent estates, sometimes the ceased estate sells in execution. Sometimes courts would require valuation and would need it from an accredited person. I know land reform and, like with tenders and things like that, but never on a normal. There it's market, the market determines the price. And that's how I've always had it.
Exactly. And the only time I can imagine that you're going to have to do a valuation is, say, for instance, you sell very far under market value or something like that, where there's an issue potentially with transfer duty and tax, where you have to show seriously this is the true value. But that's the only time. I can't see wherever else it's a requirement.
Yeah, maybe if SARS
Would there be an estate duty implication as well in that context?
I think that's in the only sort of situations. Only if SARS is sad about something will you need that.
Yeah, typically.
Okay.
Can I jump in with a curveball of my younger, better looking and cleverer colleagues? Have you ever tried to sell a piece of farmland where seemingly there's a prohibition against splitting up farmland, and I understand that, but on the reading of it, it almost suggests that no farmland can be sold absent the permission of the department, the minister, whatever the case may be. Now, people are telling me that's not the case. It's only if the farmland is going to be subdivided. But the little bit I read, I'm not sure. And I wondered if maybe you guys had encountered this in your travels.
Well, the thing is, I agree with you, but once again, it's one of those things where I can't really see why there would be an issue unless you actively subdivide. So I've seen clients trying to sell farms and then trying to sell it sort of as little pieces of plots, which can't be done without consent from the minister. But yeah, I don't, that's how I read the act as well.
So
there was
yeah.
Sorry, Bruno, carry on.
No, so I've never experienced that. I'm just thinking, practically speaking, there could be some sort of condition that limits the sale of a specific farm that you might find in the title, in the deed itself. I know with the subdivision into smaller portions, because it's agricultural, you need to get the right consent. But insofar as moving it from one person to the other, and yeah, unless there's a specific condition or some piece of legislation, yeah, but I've never seen it, so I don't know of it.
You know, the logic would be allow the state to have a right of first refusal to all farmland for a sort of land redistribution aim. So there's a logic to it, but I'm not sure that that's what the act says, or whether I've just seen a sort of an extract from an act which might not apply. So I thought I'd take advantage and ask if anyone knew.
Well, we should really one day be rebels and invite a conveyancer to join this conversation.
Yeah.
Notice the enthusiasm.
I thought, like, whoa, Greg, are you all right there?
No, I'm only teasing.
All right. Thank you for that. And then one last question is, which we had is, does the lease fall under law? Because it's just an agreement after all. Bruno, what is your answer to that?
No, I don't get it. No, I don't get to go anymore after I passed it on. See, Smiley.
I'll pass it on to you. You can go for it.
Thank you. See how friendly we are if we share a couch now suddenly on a Wednesday. No,
you just know there's wine coming.
Yeah.
I saw that question, and I saw a few of our the people on the page actually commented on that, and I was pretty impressed with the commentary on that because it's on point. It's definitely governed by law. Remember, all agreements are governed by law. Like the comment, but it's just an agreement. Yes, exactly. That is why it's governed by law. Remember, even your standard issue contract, even the contract between the us, Bruno and I, sharing a couch right now. I will bring the laptop and I will do the necessary things. But when we get here, you need to, you know, at least be polite and say thank you. That's not governed by law. But all the agreements that we actually have is always governed by law, and leases more so. In residential lease agreement, even more so, because it's governed not just by the Rental Housing Act and a few other acts. It could be the CPA and various other parts of the law. So definitely governed by law, and very specific requirements, especially because it's a specific contract. So you need specific terms in that agreement to make it a lease agreement, specific essentialia, which will make the agreement a lease agreement. So yes, they're very much governed by law.
And it's actually, just to build on that, it's actually become quite crazy, because if you look at things like the Labor Relations Act, and I think I've mentioned this before in the past, so the LRA, the Rental Housing Act, all these consumer-based acts, what you actually tend to find is more and more, the acts actually dictate most of the terms of the agreements. So even if you don't have a physical agreement in writing and some of the terms weren't as clear as they should be, a lot of these consumer-based acts would actually constitute a part of the agreement as well. But the agreement, the acts, they're governed by the law. And a contract can't go against the act. So if a lease agreement doesn't comply with the Rental Housing Act will supersede it. That's typically what you tend to find.
The even bigger point, if I may, is that particularly in the residential space, the Constitution reads in all kinds of stuff. So, you know, we've had a debate probably on this forum earlier in the year about amendments to PI. People ask me, and I'm sure they ask you all the time, do you have a good lease agreement? What can you tell us to include in a lease agreement to make things, to make it better, more foolproof, et cetera, and other than the nice TPN construction that you probably drafted, Silna, about the 20 days or the 7 days, depending if you're in and out of CPA, I say to them, no, there's nothing is going to, you could change PI. It's not going to be relevant. It doesn't matter what you've said in your lease, because you don't even really need a lease. The fact is the Constitution is going to make you do things in a certain way anyway. So, for example, in the very early days, the Prevention of Illegal Eviction from, et cetera, Act was specifically designed for squatters, open land squatters. Yeah. And then the SCA rightly found in 98 that how can squatters have more rights than tenants? So all of a sudden, PI came streaming into the residential place. So yeah, I mean, my biggest, I don't really care too much about the wording of a lease, absent those clever breach clauses, because you know, we're into the Constitution anyway. It's like why I've always said that amending PI A will never happen, B won't make any difference, because we are driven by the Constitution in the way we deal with residential tenants.
Definitely.
Exactly, and to your point, Greg, I get the question quite often from clients for a lease agreement that is watertight, a watertight lease agreement. And I always think, what do you mean? And what they actually mean is, if my tenant doesn't pay, I have the right to go and kick him out. I can't draft that in, because even if you write the words in that contract, legislation will supersede, and you can't enforce that. So a less watertight but legally compliant agreement is always your best bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, something interesting that you said, and insofar as PI is concerned, I've always had this issue, because I mean, so the problem with the reading of PI and the writing of PI, and this was documented somewhere, I don't remember where, was that it wasn't supposed to apply to normal residential leases, and it wasn't meant to apply to ex-owners, from sales and execution. And I get the constitutional argument that everyone should carry the same rights, but you're not protecting the same type of people all the time. And I almost feel it's throwing this blanket over everyone that doesn't actually need the protection. So I've never totally agreed that I maybe think that the act should have better definitions on who it's trying to protect. I mean, if you look at ESTA, it's quite specific on who they're trying to protect. You could try replicate that in a PI environment, even by having thresholds of income or something like that. I feel that when I do an eviction in Paulsdorf on a house that's 8 million rand, and the person's refusing to move out, you know, I can understand there where the person feels a bit bitter, because it's not about means or necessarily even homelessness, as opposed to certain circumstances where homelessness is truly the issue. But I mean, I digress. It is what it is. But yeah.
But to your point, I mean, there was the amendment that was never promulgated in 2005. So even the legislator agrees with you. It's just the promulgation that
it's still coming.
After 15 years, I'm starting to think maybe not.
You know, I don't even bother to look at PI anymore. You know, I look at it today out of the blue because of Section 6, which is we're trying to force the city council or municipality to do something. So I had to remind myself there. But I mean, you know, quite frankly, as I say, that the genie's out the bottle, and it's not going back in. I don't believe in the face of the constitutional stuff that the legislature could change anything in PI that would be constitutional. So I don't think they're going to. I think 2005 was going on 7 years after the SCA said this applies to everybody. And obviously in response, and I know there was a lot of pressure from everybody to change PI. Not possible, too late, won't make any difference.
Fair enough.
You know? But onto your other point about the one place where that line is still held is foreclosed owners holding over, not a PI application. No PI application, no inquiry. That's what it was.
Definitely. All right, thank you so much for that. I do see that we have a comment from Samir thanking us for the webinar, stating that it's also always insightful. She also has a question about the Property Practitioners Act and the regulations, which I'm definitely going to make a note of. So if you're watching this, then we can discuss it in January. We are a bit pressed for time this evening. I know Silna and Bruno also has to attend the function where they're at now currently.
We're skipping the party, so, but we're not drinking wine, I promise.
Not yet.
Not yet. No. If you can pull a waiter, maybe.
Okay, but then I just want to quickly have your views on 2020 in a nutshell. What you learned, what you would have done differently. I think, Silna, do you want to get started on this one? And then we can work it through Bruno and Greg then.
Ladies first on this question. It's one of those where I'm thinking, whoa. You know what, you've mentioned last week already that this is going to be the way we wrap this year up. So I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've done a lot of training, all my training for the estate agents. I wrapped up with what did we learn from 2020? Because I refuse to go for these posts on social media saying 2020 was such a horrible year, it was such a wasteful year, we never want to get that back again. Like, I get the jokes, but jokes aside, I think it was such a valuable year. It was, without any doubt, the toughest year that I've experienced in business. I don't think any one of us ever expects that you suddenly have your business come to a complete halt, complete stop, with basically 2 weeks heads up, and there's nothing. I mean, the courts were closed, we couldn't do anything. So just from an entrepreneur, business owner perspective, I think it was something I never expected. I was super surprised, and it was it was the scariest year. I remember in April realizing that if lockdown is extended further and further than that, I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay my staff, how to keep my business open. I must say, looking back now from the 9th of December, I cannot believe we are where we are, honestly. I'm not even going to be arrogant and say, yeah, but luckily we made it. It's really luckily we made it, but it's not because of my doing or because I'm a particularly good business owner or whatever. It was absolute grace. And I can't believe the things I've learned from 2020. And I think in a nutshell, what I can say, what I got from 2020 is you are never in control. Even if you think you're in control and if you want to be in control, especially us as lawyers, we want to be in control, but we're not, and we will never be. And you can't prepare for anything. But at the same time, you have to prepare for everything. So I think it was a super year for me, eviction-wise and law-wise. It was a pretty big learning curve for me as well, where we didn't have the courts to fall back on, and we had to win it, and we had to figure out an interpretation of the lockdown regulations. And I must say, obviously this is where the Property Law Alliance comes from, and it's because of people like you Bruno, and you Craig, where in the moments we didn't have courts to attend to, we didn't have anything to go to, we were on the phone with each other. And as much as we are competition, we're active competition. I mean, Bruno and I are like keeping clients happy and doing marketing for our own firms. We're direct competition, but we're sitting on the same couch and we're giving answers to the industry, which is crucial. And if it isn't for people in the same industry as you, and if it isn't for the ability to put your ego aside to work together, I think 2020 would have been an absolutely horrific year. But in the end, I think we definitely all came out stronger. Definitely more wrinkles. I have 5 that I really put on 2020 without a doubt. But it's been a tough year, but it's been a magnificent year, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
All right. Thank you so much for that. That's definitely insightful. Bruno, it's your turn now. So 2020 in a nutshell for you.
So I need to follow her. I need to follow that. Okay. So what she said, for starters, let's start with there. So maybe just echoing a few things. The reality is that this year turned everything that we know on its head. And as much as that might be a bad thing, that's also a good thing, because especially with society, with the economy, with the way that the country's run, businesses are run, ideas are formulated, marketing is carried out, even just how you interact with other humans, kindness, generosity, love, all of that was turned on its head. Because you start getting into this flow, this routine, this stagnation on how you approach things, and you just carry on with it, and it starts becoming very difficult to question that. And I suppose that's where disruption comes into a certain degree. But disruption before COVID was seen as an extraordinary thing. And I think due to COVID, it's now seen as an everyday thing. Everything is being disrupted or disruptive, because that's what it took. What did we have to do with our businesses? We had to think outside the box. We had to try achieve different things, different goals, address our staff differently, come up with different marketing strategies, get comfortable with things that you weren't necessarily always comfortable with, to create relationships where direct competitors would typically not. I mean, you'd get along, you'd have your occasional handshake, hey, how you doing type of thing. But you wouldn't really have a situation where competitors would typically be that close, especially in the legal fraternity. I mean, advocates go out and they do their thing, but I've seen a lot of lawyers, especially like head lawyers at different firms, they don't like each other. And what the COVID created was that desire, like we realized, we need each other. We need to speak to our clients about being kinder to their tenants, or whoever they're going up against. A level of patience, that sort of thing. So I tend to agree with the sentiments that don't look at 2020 as a waste. Yes, not everything went smoothly, but look at the bright side. Like the silver lining is what we all took out of it, that now we can carry on to a new year, hopefully without a lockdown during the winter months.
Fingers crossed, yeah, so not.
It's a wooden table.
All right. Oh, thank you so much, Bruno. And then Greg, what is your views?
Yeah, I agree with all of the above. I must say that I really enjoyed I've enjoyed the interaction with Bruno and Silna, the more formalized interaction, and of course with you, Marley, that we actually had started before lockdown. I think before lockdown was even contemplated, we started having this discussion. But then obviously it's been formalized and expanded, and it's been really nice. And I've enjoyed the interaction with you guys, and it's been useful in the context of just trying to get things done. I've felt the support of my colleagues and peers from you three, which I really have enjoyed over and above my own internal colleagues, because you interact with them all the time. Thank God for case lines. I think we'd have been up a very, very smelly creek if it wasn't for case lines, and we were a little bit dismissive in January. What's the JP up to? It's all too premature, but thank God, because we were functioning from April, but for because of case lines that we wouldn't have been able to do, and other divisions kicked things into the fourth term because they didn't have a facility to function. So I think that it's accelerated case lines. It's been a real boon and a win for us in South Gauteng, and I suppose North Gauteng as well. So I'm glad of that. I understand there's some staff resistance to case lines because inevitably it might mean reduced staffing levels. So I think some of the problems that have arisen have been deliberate sabotage. The extent to which I despise the public sector has now been enhanced by 1,000%. The extent to which I had a vague, benign view of government has gone. I won't say I'm as yet a Waco survivalist, but hey, it's coming. Lawyers, people assume lawyers are lawyers because they like laws. It's the opposite. We're lawyers because we dislike laws. So a lot of civilian people assume we like laws. We don't like laws. So that's been massively enhanced. The public sector have taken the longest paid holiday they've ever had. They are trying to stay in that holiday. It's pathetic. It is pathetic, is all I can say. This business of going down to court and someone saying, no visits. Sorry. The pandemic for now is under control in Joburg. It might come up again, but for now, there are a tiny number of cases. Open your door, deal with the public, do your job for which you are paid. So that. What did I want to say?
2020 for Greg.
Pardon?
Frustration. I pick up a little bit of frustration. I'm no
no, this isn't frustration. This is me feeling much better. You should have seen me in May and June. No. No, this is normal. This is normal. I haven't said the state is your enemy once. Anyway, the anti-eviction NGOs have taken the opportunity to attack. Cape Town here, there's a distinct attack on property rights. People are using this to mount an attack on the systems. They're trying to achieve other aims. If you look at the lockdown 1 regulations, you can see the manifestation of that kind of anti-competitive thinking. It's in my earlier words, pathetic and inappropriate. How's that? What else I want to say? Our systems have been challenged. What we found is we expanded quite quickly last year. and we were starting to perfect some really good interactive systems. Now, all of a sudden, we found ourselves kind of partly off-site. Most of our bureaucracy was off-site, which meant we realized a few weeks ago that people were functioning in silos and not in teams. So we had to re-galvanize our thinking about how our own systems worked. I have to say, I'm very pleased that that it worked on a turn. The moment we realized the problem, everybody was able to undo the problem and get back to the more efficient team mechanism. I mean, one of our guys is still not on site, but can work fully functionally remotely, so that's fine. But a second more important member of a second more daily interactive member of our staff has only been back full time for about 3 weeks now. That's a very long time to not have your entire system available to you. But what's happened is now that things are working like they were heading for before, now things are going utterly crazy, and it's the 9th of December, and there's no sign of things ending. Presumably we will stop. Presumably we will take Christmas, but we might not. So that's where we are now. Zoom, I like Zoom for consultations. It's much more efficient than driving somewhere. It works. It really works out. I don't like Zoom for court, or Teams for court. At least it works, but there's a much more interactive system in court that works better if everyone is present. So, it's mostly fine, but it's sometimes not. So I'm keen to get back into proper court, as is our Section 34 right. What else? That's it. Rant over. If there are other subjects you'd like me to rant about, just nominate them and I will rant.
Oh, well said. Now we need to take snippets and start quoting you on that.
Definitely.
Don't quote me on the state is your enemy.
No, just the pathetic parts.
All right, thank you, Greg, for that. And then just from my side, and I'm definitely speaking on behalf of all our viewers as well. Silna, Bruno, Greg, thank you so much for this year. Thank you for all your insightful advice during all the different levels of regulations, and I think what you're doing for the property industry is amazing. So thank you so much for that, and I'm looking forward to next year and continuing on that journey, and I think our viewers as well. So thank you guys, and I hope you get to rest a bit during December.
We're rested in lockdown. There's no rest.
Yeah.
And then to all our viewers, thank you so much. I hope you have a great holiday and a Merry Christmas and everything. And then I just want to mention that we're going to do reruns during this period. And then we're going to start up in January again with our Wednesday webinars. We'll still confirm the date, which our first episode is going to be on our page. And I don't know if there's any last thoughts from your side.
Merry Christmas.
Marley, thank you.
Merry Christmas, and thank you, Marily, for us every Wednesday. And be safe and try not to get into trouble over Christmas and New Year. Remember, we can only help you with eviction, not like drinking and driving. So stay safe.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thanks so much, Marty, for everything.
No, it's
so Greg, it was a lot of fun.
It really
was. Thank you, Bruno. Thanks, Silna. Thanks, Marley.
All right, guys. I think that's about a wrap up, and then you can attend your function now, Silna and Bruno.
We're gonna do fine now.
All right, but thank you. But thank you, guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and be safe during the holidays as well.
You too. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.